Hello and welcome to the Band of One podcast. I am Riley Wilson, and this podcast is designed for anybody that wants to be a solo performer, either a musician or a DJ. Now, I've got over 50 years of experience personally in doing live performances, and I'll share not only the tips I've learned, but the tips from other hardworking pros in their neck of the woods. The idea here is to make this actionable, fun, and something you can actually make money with. I hope you'll like and share and subscribe to the podcast. Let's get busy. Today I have a guy who's been rather elusive for me to track down because he's so darn busy. The indefatigable Bill Cody. Bill, welcome.
Hey, Riley, how you doing? It's good to be busy.
It is marvelous to be busy. And for folks that don't know, Bill Cody is probably one of the greatest DJs in the entire Southwest, certainly in the state of Texas. He also has an incredible booking agency called Bill Cody's Party Time Texas, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But let's begin in the very beginning. Bill, where did all this start? Are you originally from Texas?
No, I actually grew up in the great state of Wisconsin, and at a very early age was thrust into the realm of music performance. My dad was a band director. My mom was a piano teacher and the choir director at our local church. So they had me playing instruments and singing at probably 4 or 5 years old. And
Wow.
the really interesting thing about that was that they wanted me to be a classical type performer. My dad really wanted me to play woodwinds. I chose trumpet. My mom had me going on piano at a very early age. And then the Beatles, the Monkees, the Rolling Stones, they all were calling my name. You want to be a rock and roll guy. So I got to learn how to play guitar with the Beatles, learn how to sing and play guitar with the Monkees. And I got these books and learned how to play guitar on my own because I knew how to read music. And then kind of the rest was history about performing and so forth. So you know me as the DJ, but I was playing in bands back in the late 60s, early 70s, and actually came to Dallas the day Elvis died with an Elvis impersonator named Johnny Hara, 1977.
I know about Johnny. Wow.
Quite a story. So
Wow.
I worked radio off and on in some nightclubs up north, but mostly I was a rock and roll guy as I went to college. Had a few different stints at smaller market radio stations. Biggest claim to fame up there was morning sign on a radio station in Madison. It was pretty cool. We would open the day with Jimi Hendrix' Star Spangled Banner rather than an orchestra playing it. And it was album rock before it was called classic rock. So that's kind of how I really got started in the DJ end of things.
Because again, we share the same first name. My first name is William, as is yours. I also was in radio. In fact, I majored in radio, television, film at UNC Chapel Hill and worked in radio in 3 different stints. And yeah, back then we called it AOR.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Right. So,
Yep.
so mom and dad decided that you were going to be a musician, William, and you're obviously you're playing the piano and you're doing some horn stuff like that, and you started messing with guitar. When would you say you started playing out in a band or even a solo format? If you did that.
Um, I would take my acoustic guitar to school, and actually in seventh and eighth grade would play and sing and get a crowd of people around me during lunch hour or whatever. I was sort of a show off. I guess I craved the attention and kept wanting a bigger stage. To be honest with you, the little town I grew up in just wasn't big enough. And as things progressed, I sort of ran away from what my parents wanted me to do, which was go to college and learn how to be a teacher. I wanted to be a doer. I wanted to be out there on the stage. So the first day of college after my senior year of high school, I actually went and auditioned for a band. and, and I literally ran away and joined the circus, is the way my parents looked at it. I had done well enough working at a local small town radio station, playing in little bands to save up enough money to go out into this venture. I had the PA. At that time, I was playing drums and singing, actually. So I joined this band in Madison,
Wow.
which was like going to Austin here in Texas, and just kept doing it after that. So that was 1974, actually 73, right after I graduated high school. Yeah.
So, talk to folks again. You know, you and I are here in Texas, but we both lived in the upper Midwest. I lived in Michigan. You lived in Wisconsin. Can you talk about the Madison scene? That's a very interesting place to go to college and just an interesting place, period.
A lot like Ann Arbor, East Lansing,
Hmm.
the capital of the state. It was a lot like Austin, sort of the music capital of Texas, if you will. We had all kinds of clubs and places where bands could play, and of course we toured a lot of the smaller towns that had little pubs, bars, taverns where they'd stick you in the corner and say have at it. I have some great stories. We played at a place called Dick's on the Square in Baraboo, Wisconsin. We got there for the first time ever, and we said, "Okay, well, where's the stage? We're here to set up." And he pointed at the pool table in the back, and we're looking at it, going, "Okay, we're a four-piece band, and how are we going to fit on the pool table? Let alone, why would you want us up there?" He said, "Hold on a second." He yelled to the guys in the back. He goes, "Boys, bring out the stage cover." So these two guys come walking in with a piece of 4x8 plywood that was painted. It looked very nice, painted black. They put it on top of the pool table and said, "There you go." So I was the drummer in that band, and we decided that I should be up on the pool table stage, and the other three guys were in front of me at their own peril. The problem was the drum set didn't quite fit on the 4 foot deep stage. And if I hit a cymbal too hard, it almost would fall off and decapitate my band members in front of me. So that was a funny one. I mean, there were a lot of crazy stories about little bars and stuff, but
You know, I think we probably could do two or three just podcasts about crazy stuff that happened in places like
oh,
that. There was a place called
absolutely.
the Cellar in Charlotte, North Carolina, that I would play, and if you jumped, there were spikes from the second floor hanging down over your head. I'm 6'3", so I had to watch to keep my head from going through there. Leonard Skinner played there all the time before their first
Nice.
record actually allowed them to get out and play actual shows in concerts. But they played the Cellar a bunch. It was not the grooviest place to play, but one of the things that I think was really good for me and for you, again, we're pretty much the same age. I graduated in 1973 from high school as well. There were a lot of places you could go hone your craft. Some that were safer than others, we'll just say, but
Absolutely.
you could hone your craft. You could make mistakes, and over a period of time, you could get better. And I'm assuming that's exactly what happened with you too, right?
Yeah, I would say, from the little bands that I had in high school, which were basement garage band type things. I mean, we played some of our own school dances, which was pretty cool. Um, but, as things progressed and I found better musicians to be around and play with, we got
Yes.
pretty darn good. Probably the best band I was ever with was a direct rival of Cheap Trick. We both The band I was in was called Chunky Pie. Great name. Uh, if you saw the bumper sticker, you would die laughing. It had a picture of a cow with its tails up, a tail up, and a cow patty up underneath. And our slogan was direct from America's Dairyland, Chunky Pie. So anyway, so Cheap Trick and Chunky Pie were both working for the same agency out of Madison, Wisconsin, and we played the same college bars. We were on the same tour. Well, we happened to be in Michigan playing at the Wrath Cellar in the basement of the Commons there at what it East Lansing
Yeah.
is Michigan State. Is that right?
Yep. It's Michigan State. Yeah. The
Yeah, yeah.
Spartans.
Okay, so we're playing there for a week, and our agent called our hotel and got a message to us. This is way before pagers, cell phones, whatever, and said, "Is there any way you guys can get back to Madison? We have an emergency." And we're like, "Okay, that's what, a 20-hour drive from there through Chicago on the underside of Lake Michigan." And we said, "No, I don't think so. What's up?" Well, David Bowie is scheduled to play at the Dane County Coliseum, which is kind of like American Airlines Center here in Dallas, and his backup band can't be there. And we need a backup band, and we thought maybe
Wow.
you guys could get here in time. There was no way. Well, it turns out Cheap Trick was idle that night. They got a hold of them. Cheap Trick came and played with David Bowie. David Bowie loved them. Guess what happened?
Isn't that the way these things always go?
He helped them get their first record deal. He promoted them. He let them back him up on several other occasions. They blew up. I mean, here we are on the same level, right? We're
Yeah.
playing the same bars, making the same money, whatever. So all of a sudden, Cheap Trick gets a record deal. They're doing concerts. We're still playing the bars. That was a little disappointing, and probably the highlight, low light combo of my career, other than doing the Johnny Hara thing and coming to Dallas.
Well, let's back up a little bit. A couple of things.
Oops, sorry about that. I had somebody trying to call.
Okay. So let's back up a little bit. After
Yeah.
high school, you mentioned about college. Did you do college at any point after that, or you just played in bands until you moved to Dallas, or how did all of that play out?
I played off and on while I was in college and also when I was working in radio.
Okay, so let's talk about that because again, we've got so many parallels. You and I worked in radio, as I said, 3 different times. You were going to school where? At Wisconsin Madison, or where?
Yep, Wisconsin Madison. I did a radio, television, TV degree up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. By gosh, that was really a crazy area up there. They had a lot of radio up there, and I I felt like I was taking courses to become something I already was. So I ended up kind of backing out of the college and just worked full time radio. And at the same time, still had some band stuff going on the side.
So let me ask about that. When you did radio, were you being a DJ, a news guy, or did you do both, or how did that work out?
Most of the small stations that I was involved in, you did everything. You were the DJ, you were the weatherman, you were the news guy. You would rip and read the teletype, and unless it was like the morning sign on where you had somebody else come in and do the news,
Yeah,
you did everything.
yeah, yeah. Okay, that was my background as
Voiceovers,
well.
commercials,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I tell folks that if you want to know what radio is like, get a book and a flashlight, go sit in a closet and shut the door, turn the light off, read the book aloud for 3 hours. When you get bored, keep reading. And I said, and you'll get
Exactly.
paid the same thing you get paid at McDonald's.
Yeah. I don't know. Did you ever have any situations where the radio station went automated?
Yes. Oh, 1980, I worked at WREL FM in Raleigh, and it was an automation system. They had 5 huge reel to reel tape decks, 10-inch
Right,
reels, 7.5 IPS, right? And it was a computer that did all of that. And
right.
that was very interesting. My job was to babysit the automation system. I would usually bring my guitar in there because I would get bored, and I had to work like, I think it was like noon to 5, like 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. or something like that. It was a long shift. Yeah, I did that. I didn't enjoy it.
Well, I had literally several situations like that. I worked for a station called Love Stereo, and they had me do all of the voiceovers that you heard 24/7. And it was like really crazy. I had to speak in this really like kind of sexy voice. Music just for the two of us on WLVE Love
Yep.
Stereo.
Yep.
So Love
Yep.
Stereo weekend, that was pretty weird. I remember a lot of people were amazed how I was on the air 24/7. I was like, yeah,
Well,
pretty cool.
it's interesting because again, and what I hope our listeners and viewers will learn as they do this. I learned a very interesting thing my junior year at UNC Chapel Hill. Nothing is ever introduced unless it's used. For example, in a sitcom on television, a 22 and a half minute episode of Friends, for example, there's not a single line of dialogue that's not absolutely important to the story. And one of the other things that you learn is eventually in your life, if you're fortunate like you and I have been, you get to use all of those things in your work. And that's kind of where I wanted to head after that, because you were working in radio, you were doing voiceovers, you're doing commercials and all those kinds of things. You were using your voice. And I'm also assuming, would it be fair to say that you were also a good singer in these bands as well? Because you were singing and playing drums, which is an incredibly tough thing to do.
Yeah, typically I either played guitar or guitar keyboard or drums, but was also pretty much the lead singer and announcer guy.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about college for you. Either winds down or you decide I'm not going back for that semester or semesters. And you end up in a band that comes to Texas. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, this band was a band that had been around for a while. In fact, at one point they were called Underground Sunshine, which had a top 40 hit of the Beatles' birthday. Da 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 da. They say it's your birthday. They actually recorded that song in the U.S. and made it a hit. I don't know how they got away with it, but they did. And they later changed their name to Benedict when I joined the band. That's what it was called. And the leader of the band had this option to go audition for this Elvis show. And the unique thing about this is that there was a manager who was willing to pay a band's salary, which was unheard of back then.
Sure.
All expenses, travel, even guitar picks and strings were paid for.
Wow.
And in that band, I played guitar and sang, played a little bit of keyboard stuff. But when we were the dance band, like the pre-concert show sets, I was the lead singer, and we were doing Doobie Brothers and stuff like that. I remember we did "Oh What a Night" late December back in '63. That's a couple of the songs. BTO, Taking Care of Business, just stuff like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of doobies. We did Long Train Running, China Grove. So I sang most of those songs. And then when we were starting to do the show with Johnny Hara, the Elvis guy, I would go back to a keyboard position off the main stage and introduce him. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the profile of Presley. Here he is, Johnny Hara. And we're, playing the 2001 Space Odyssey into OCC Rider.
Yep.
Dun, 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 dun. Johnny was a very talented, heavy Elvis lookalike. And he sounded like Elvis. He acted like Elvis. The guy was amazing. The only problem is he wasn't very musical. And he had a really hard time coming in on the right beat. And
Mm.
he would come in wrong. Oh, C Rider. He would come in on the wrong beat and then turn around and look at all of us, and we would have to adjust to
Wow.
him.
Wow.
It happened not once, but every time.
Oh
Because
gosh.
he would get all excited and get out there on stage. Yeah, I'd freak out. So anyway, we're auditioning for this guy, and they liked us. So long story short, here we are traveling around the Midwest. We were in Kansas City on August 15th, 1977. That was the night that Elvis actually, I guess, died, or he
Yeah.
died in the morning.
Yeah.
And we played a big concert there in an auditorium. I remember, the excitement level was not quite there yet because Elvis was alive. And, kind of like the same thing happened with Michael Jackson and Prince.
Yeah.
When they passed away, there was all of a
Sure.
sudden a huge excitement for the former performer. But we drove overnight from Kansas City and had an 8-track. I remember we were listening to House of the Holy, Led Zeppelin 8-track, all the way from Kansas City. And we pulled into the hotel that we were staying at, which was a little hotel out by the airport, DFW area. And I walked in, I was the first one to walk in, probably pretty rough looking, having spent the night traveling and whatever. And I walked up to the desk with my Doobie Brother hair, really long, right? And the girl at the front desk, oh my, you must be in that Elvis band. Are you in the Elvis band? And I said, why, yes, I am. Well, how y'all doing? Have you heard the news? And I'm like, no, no. Well, Elvis died. And I just was like, my jaw could have hit the floor. I was like, so what does this mean? We started off the week with pretty much an empty club on a Monday night. And by the second and third day, we started to get packed because people heard about this Elvis guy being in town. And the next thing we know, we're invited to headline a K Jam. I think it was called Country Jam. They used to do at the Cotton Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
K-Box, KBOX Country. And it turned out that the date of this concert was 20 years to the date that Elvis had played the Cotton Bowl when he was in town to shoot um, State Fair with Ann Margaret.
Wow.
He actually played the Cotton Bowl on August. I can't remember the exact date. It might have actually been September um, of 1957.
Yeah.
So we're playing at the Cotton Bowl. This was like our great hurrah with this guy, Johnny Hara. And we literally headlined this show. They brought him in a limo out on the field, just like it would have been
Wow.
Elvis. And I mean, it's amazing. There's actually some TV footage on Channel 8's archives where they've got it's really terrible looking, but you can actually kind of get a glimpse of me and the band and Johnny Hara popping up on stage and doing his thing. The next day, Dallas Morning News front page headlines. I've got a clip of it on my website just because it's a big claim to fame for me, but I'm not in the picture. He's in the picture throwing a scarf off the stage to people
Wow.
in the crowd. Yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff. So a week after that, we're finishing up our 3-week stint at the Holiday Inn at Esther's Road in 114. And we're actually playing a little club called Club Gigi's. Did you ever happen to work there or hear
I
about it?
have not. I got here in '96, so unfortunately, a lot of the
Oh,
'70s and
yeah,
'80s
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
that
20 years
happened in
later,
Dallas,
yeah.
I wasn't able to be part of. I know
Right,
the
right.
area. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was nothing out there but this Holiday Inn and the airport back then in a little town called Grapevine, which is huge now compared to what it
Yeah.
was. Anyway, we were told that a concert promoter by the name of Glenn Pace was interested in the band. And his objective was to take us to Vegas and fulfill a contract with RCA. That's who Elvis had been recording with at the time.
Yes. Hmm.
Well, we met with him and he told us all he liked the band. He thought we were going places. We just had one thing we had to do, we had to cut our hair.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, that was that was a game changer. It was like, what? Yeah, he goes, in order for you to look like the Elvis band, you need to cut your hair, at least, to mullet looking, you know what I mean? And he wanted us to wear matching uniforms. And you remember the band that backed up Elvis? They were called the
Oh,
George.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they looked a lot more like we do now with shorter hair and, nice little dressy outfits that
Yeah.
matched and whatever. And three of us in the band just looked at each other and went, "No way, sorry." Well, Glenn Pace offered us, this is unheard of as well. He offered us $500 a piece to go home. So I took the money, flew home, first time I'd ever flown in a big airplane,
Wow.
got everything I owned, packed it up, and came back down to Texas and started DJing. There's my story.
Here's the thing. I get it, particularly if you had fronted all these bands that playing keyboards and being off stage for an Elvis impersonator is not exactly a high point in your career. But what prompted you not only to come back to Texas, but also to change gears so drastically to become a DJ? Because that's an interesting one.
Well, I had some people that were interested in me as a happy hour performer, playing guitar and
Okay.
singing, and literally that led to being the DJ at the place. I said, I could do that too, and they went, "Really?" So I would come in at 5 o'clock and open up with playing and singing. I actually opened up a place called Sugar Daddy's, which was
Yeah.
above the Don Carter bowling alley over at Walnut Hill and 35.
Yeah.
And gradually started getting more and more DJs working with me and for me. And we started going to other clubs saying, "Hey, we've got a team of DJs." So not only was I performing a little bit, playing guitar and singing, I was never that good at a solo thing because I could only play rhythm. I didn't have much going on as far as playing lead and stuff. So it just turned out to be a lot. I can't say, I hate to say easier, but I just fell into the DJ groove and built a team of DJs, and then the rest is history. We started doing clubs. People asked us if we did weddings, holiday parties, whatever, and eventually we became an agency.
One of the great things about your story is that I think a lot of people, particularly that have not been to Texas, right? I had a chance to visit Houston in 1976, and the mid 70s for Dallas and Houston just exploded everything. Um,
Absolutely.
and this is a great place to be. It's still a marvelous place to be. I mean, I work about as much as I want to work, and you've worked for years. We both have. But I think it's because people in Texas really love entertainment of any sort, whether it's
Hmm.
pre-recorded or somebody doing live music. It doesn't matter. But you need to be good if you want to succeed. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And, I mentioned earlier the stage wasn't big enough. When I came to Dallas and saw the new sparkling buildings, the Hyatt downtown with the ball, the mirrored office buildings, the brand new highway infrastructure. I mean, back then there wasn't a spot of litter anywhere. And the grass was always trimmed and everything was just beautiful, brand new, shiny. And it was a huge city from what I was used to. So compared to the crumbling infrastructure, old red brick buildings and potholes of Wisconsin, and the fact that it was sunny and warm in September and October, I was so used to being freezing all the time. I mean, there were a lot of things that kind of led me to this, but the stage was so much bigger and the opportunities so much greater here in Dallas that I just couldn't resist it. I had to come.
Well, it's interesting. Again, I had conversations with two or three friends in North Carolina. We were in Raleigh for a decade, from 87 to 96 almost. And I had several friends that told me that if you want to go to Texas, if you're a guitar player that sings, that if you can't make a living as a musician in Texas, you can't make a living. And they were absolutely right. In fact, one of my only laments is that we probably could have gotten here 5 or 10 years earlier. But I mean, the town Frisco, where we moved to in 1996, had 18,000 people, one middle school,
Wow.
one high school. And
Yeah,
you live in McKinney, as we both know. Frisco is now 250,000 people. That's where the Dallas Stars facility is. That's where the
sure.
Dallas, the Cowboys, everything. It's
Yeah.
come here, and I've told people for 30 years. Um, North Texas, and really the whole state of Texas, is like riding a Roman candle on the 4th of July. You keep thinking that eventually the thing is going to blow up and just scatter, but this one just keeps going up higher and exploding bigger.
Exactly. When I moved here, there wasn't much north of 635. I mean, that was like Farmers Branch and what is now Addison. There was nothing out there. It was
Yeah,
farmland. There
yeah,
were horse barns and stuff like that. And uh, so, yeah, the progression has been amazing and how well and big this area has grown and fast.
yeah, absolutely. So I have a question for you before we delve into the DJing stuff, because we're definitely going to go down there as well as the booking agency part of it and all of this.
Sure.
When you started transitioning into doing mostly DJing, or maybe not even doing performing per se anymore, was there any of that you missed, or were you just so darn busy? And DJing, of course, requires its own skill set, and it's quite consumptive in terms of time and energy and focus. Were you
It
so
does.
absorbed in that you didn't miss it, or how'd you feel about that, Bill?
I've got to tell you, the interesting thing was DJing is so easy for me. You don't have to practice, you don't have to rehearse, you don't have to memorize words, you don't have to, you know what I mean? That it was kind of a fail safe for me. I will say I did miss performing, and when Urban Cowboy hit, right after the Disco
Mm-hmm.
Mania, when Urban Cowboy hit, I did go back and actually took on Wild Bill Cody, your cowboy DJ singer guy, and was playing guitar and singing at happy hour again, but doing things like Margaritaville and
Mm-hmm.
Waylon and Willie, Lookenbach, Texas, stuff like that. And even Hank Jr. So yeah, in the early '80s, I went back to performing a little bit, uh, but always DJ'd too. And by then, we actually started getting private party bookings. So that was a big transition, coming out of the clubs and having to haul the turntables and the records and pounds and pounds and pounds of equipment. It was literally like bringing in a little band setup, to do a DJ gig outside of the club.
Or in some cases for you, because I know how much gear you've hauled over the years, a big band, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I
There's a
mean,
lot of gear involved in being a DJ. And
well,
in fact,
it's gotten a lot less, obviously, being able
yes,
to haul all your music in a laptop compared to, boxes of records or CDs. So I've gone through all these different styles of performance, different styles of music, from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s on up to today. It's amazing how the trends go. Uh, there was a big thing back in the 70s. Everybody wanted to have a 50s sock hop. In the
yeah,
80s, everybody wanted to do a 60s Motown, big chill kind of thing. So it kind of resonates that way, that the retro thing is about 20, 30 years older than what today is. And that's usually driven by people that are younger than us now, but usually young parents who want to reminisce about their college days or
sure.
whatever. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Anyway, yeah. So going back to the live performance, I still miss it now. I love to karaoke once in a while. I still play guitar a little bit, and I've got a keyboard. And I recently sold my drum kit. I'm really upset about that, but we were downsizing and something had to go.
I completely get that. It's interesting. I had this conversation with David Payton, who does what I do in Atlanta, very successful guy. And he's actually to a point right now where he's doing both. He plays guitar and sings, and he's excellent guitar player, excellent singer for 2 hours, and then he DJs, as he calls it, the rump shaking music. And it's been
Yeah.
interesting because what he told me, and I think you probably would verify this. He said that when I started to do the DJing, he said, number one, I had to haul a lot more gear, but number two, I got paid a lot more money.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, this is why I kind of cratered on the music thing. I found I was getting paid, my starting pay when I started DJing in Dallas was $10 an hour in 1977. And that to me was huge. And I could work as many hours as I wanted to and as many days, nights as I wanted to. And I was literally making, 500, 600, 700 a week, which we were not making playing in bands back then.
No, absolutely not.
And yeah. And then when the private party thing started happening, I mean, I literally today make more money than bands make sometimes, which I
Oh,
feel
sure.
is horrible. I'm like, what? Why isn't the band worth more? I don't get it. I mean, unless you're Emerald City or one of the top-notch bands in the area, you're. I really feel like you should be getting paid more, Riley, when you go out and do a private party.
I appreciate that. And I've started doing some of that. I think one of the big things, and I remember having a conversation with a young lady at a club about 1977. And it was something about live music. And she says, I don't like live music. She said, the performers aren't as good as they are in record. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? If you're talking about like a Steely Dan record, I get that. I'm no Larry
Yeah,
Carlton, and I get that. But I think one of the other things, too, to be perfectly honest about it, is a great DJ, which you are a very good DJ, and you've got have had for 40 plus years here, a stable of great guys. They know how to get a party going, how to keep a party going. There's not a lot of dead air. They've got good sounding equipment. They often have lights and all that kind of stuff. So it becomes a real 3D experience. I told my wife before, I'm not a fan of people performing outdoors wearing short pants. I just don't think it looks good. That's just Riley. I know that probably flies in the face of everybody else listening to that. But even
I,
if it's 105 degrees, which it's going to be this weekend, I got a show Friday night in Wiley. I'm not going to be wearing shorts because I don't think it looks professional. That's just me.
I agree with you, but I also like to be comfortable. So I'll wear very nice shorts sometimes when I'm DJing outside. If it's a kids event or, something where everyone is casual, I will succumb and be casual too.
Yeah. And I get that. And I
But
said, I think that's just my thing. But one of the things that I would suggest is that anybody that's going to be a solo performer, whether you're a musician or a DJ, make professionalism probably the one of the top goals. Would you agree with that?
oh my, yeah, absolutely. Looking good is just as important as sounding good, I think. And professionalism starts with the first thing that people see, maybe not the first thing they hear. If they show up and you haven't started yet and your setup looks kind of crappy, they're going to get that first impression. So whether it's the stage appeal, the equipment, the way it looks, if it's beat up, I mean, put some spray paint on it, whatever you need to do to make it look good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to pause right here. This is the end of my first visit with my friend Bill Cody. You've been listening to the Band of One podcast, and thanks for being a part of this one. If you have questions or ideas or suggestions about upcoming podcasts, please reach out to us through our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Band of One podcast. You can also contact me directly, Riley at guitarmadesimpler.com. See you next time.